Well, joining us today to comment on the state of U.S.-Israel relations, we have former U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman. Ambassador Friedman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Emily. Great to be with you.
To start, I'd love to get your take on the recent comments of President Biden towards Prime Minister Netanyahu. Would you say the U.S. support for Israel is wavering?
It sure looks that way. I think the comments by America's greatest friend in the middle of a war when Israel's fighting for its life, these comments by the president that try to draw a dichotomy between the Israeli people and the Israeli leadership, I think it's highly political. I think it's an attempt to, to score points in places like Michigan where, Biden needs to get a lot of Arab voters, and I think he's trying to, make the case that he loves Israel, but that he doesn't like Netanyahu, and so, somehow by threading that needle, he scores some political points. The problem with it is this: Israel's in the middle of a war. The prime minister right now is Benjamin Netanyahu. He is fighting the war. The country, as far as I can tell, has rallied behind him around 80% or so in terms of their approval of how he's handling the war. What happens in the future when there's elections, who's going to win, what the polls say, things could change, but that's not the circumstances now. The circumstances now are Israel's fighting a war, and what America should be doing is showing absolutely no daylight between itself and Israel's elected leaders. And by doing that, and here's the real problem, Emily, by doing that, by showing that daylight, you're playing into the hands of Hamas, because Hamas sees that daylight, and they think to themselves, you know what? We may not be wiped out. We may actually be able to survive this. We may get a break at Rafah. We may be able to keep 2 or 3 battalions. We may be able to keep our lives. We may be able to keep some of our money, because Biden is going to shut Israel down. And that raises the price for all the negotiations. It makes it harder to recover the hostages. It makes it harder to achieve a ceasefire. So I really think Biden's doing exactly the wrong thing with regard to this approach.
It seems that the Biden administration has continued to call for Israel to exercise caution and to make humanitarian guarantees when Israel is already doing so. So why is there this disconnect? If it's just political posturing, as you alluded to, on the part of the Biden administration, is it pandering to more anti-Israel voices?
No, I think that's it. I mean, look, they meet often, they speak often, the governments know each other. They know that Israel, both because of its sense of morality and because it's just not helpful for Israel to, incur the wrath of the world. Israel's doing all it can to avoid civilian casualties. And, the statistics comparing this war to others, I won't bore you with the numbers, but it bears that out. Israel's doing a very good job of trying to avoid casualties. The problem is, all it takes is 1 or 2 pictures of a starving child or a dead body. As you know, some of these pictures are staged, and the dead bodies all of a sudden start moving as soon as the camera's off. But whatever it is, I mean, assuming, as I do, that there are, civilian casualties of some significance, nonetheless, that is what happens in a war. And the quicker Israel is able to complete this war, to annihilate Hamas, the quicker, we'll get back to a rebuilding program. What Biden is doing is he's prolonging the misery by creating this duality, this sense that somehow Israel needs to slow down on the war, needs to get into some ceasefire, which will only enable Hamas to regroup and to rearm. And it'll just prolong the misery of everybody on both sides. But as you say, he's doing it for politics because he has to show to his base, to the far left base that he relies on to get elected in November. He has to show that he's doing more for the Palestinians. And this is all just kind of political trickery. It will have no substantive benefit to anyone there, Israeli or Arab, but it's how the political game is played.
Now, the U.S. just signed the Iran sanctions waiver again, effectively unlocking $10 billion to the Islamic Republic. Do you think that this U.S. administration sees the connection between Israel's fight with Hamas and the threats to the U.S. from regimes like the Islamic Republic? Are they doing enough to deter the threat from this regime and its terror proxies?
No, they're committing diplomatic malpractice every single day. Providing Iran with funding of any kind, whether it's in the form of sanctions, relief, or otherwise, is absolute madness. I mean, I don't know anyone that thinks this is a good idea. I don't understand the benefits to America. I think I think funding Iran, which is, I would say, the key difference between the Biden administration and the Trump administration, right? The Trump administration, the sanctions that we imposed were massive. We eliminated Qasem Soleimani, and Iran was broke. And in the Biden administration, Iran has become a very wealthy nation, and they're getting richer and richer. And what are they doing with that money? You know, they're not building hospitals, they're not building schools. They're building, you know, hypersonic missiles, ballistic missiles. They're enriching uranium. They're funding Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis. And for America to be funding this is absolute madness. By the way, what it also is doing, it's enabling Iran to sell oil to Russia. So it's actually making it harder for America to help Ukraine win that war as well. So America's foreign policy is adrift. It's self-defeating, and there are stark differences between what's happening now and what happened during the Trump administration.
All right, well, we are out of time, but I want to thank you, Ambassador Friedman, for taking the time to talk to us, and let's hope the Biden administration heeds your warning and changes course. Thank you, Ambassador Friedman.
Thank you, Emily. My pleasure.